Check this out. Who would have thought? On a piece of abandoned land, in less than 2 weeks, a guy managed with just his hands, using discarded wood stones and some random junk that didn't look like much, to build a sturdy and practical shelter house. When many people saw the scrap he collected, they couldn't help but shake their heads and say, all this trash would at most sit in a corner rusting and rotting away. How could it ever become a livable house? But this guy just wouldn't accept that. He wasn't an architect and had never studied civil engineering, just a regular country guy. With a never-give-up attitude and a lot of patience, he made everyone's eyes go wide. People tried to talk him out of it, saying, nowadays in the city there are cheap prefab houses and container conversions everywhere. Easy and comfortable. Why go through all this trouble out in the middle of nowhere? But he just gave a faint smile, thinking to himself, what truly lasts is the connection between a person and the land? At first he carefully picked the spot. He didn't choose a low, wet area. Instead he found a slightly raised piece of ground, sheltered from the wind and facing the sun on all sides. Nearby there were some big rocks and scattered lumber, perfect to make use of. To get the foundation right, he first cleared away all the dry grass and loose stones, then moved all the jumbled up small branches out of the way. The cleared ground quickly became visible. He dug in little by little with a shovel, making a rectangular trench for the base, about half a meter deep. The bottom of the trench was covered with small crushed stones and wood chips. Not only does this help with drainage and moisture control, it also makes the ground more solid. Next came the woodworking stage. He didn't have any brand new planks, just some discarded old lumber and fallen logs. He used a handsaw to cut the wood into the lengths he needed, one piece at a time. The cuts were smooth and clean. He knew this was the skeleton of the whole building, so every cut was made with care. Those seemingly useless pieces of wood gradually became neat and orderly in his hands, lined up to the side, waiting to be put to use. At the same time, he also gathered a lot of loose, natural stones from nearby. These stones were big and small, with different shades of color and very irregular shapes. He moved them one by one next to the trench, sweating like crazy, but gritting his teeth and pushing through. Then he started laying the stones in the foundation trench. He didn't use cement. Instead he used the traditional dry stacking method, placing the stones in a staggered pattern, relying on gravity and friction to keep them stable. Every time he put one on, he would try to wiggle it to make sure it wouldn't come loose. In the gaps, he also packed in clay and small pebbles, which both reinforced it and prevented drafts. Once the foundation was solid, he kept building the walls upward. Those irregular stones fit together and surprisingly created a natural pattern. Rugged but good-looking. He filled the gaps with clay, making the walls look even neater and stronger. When the wall was built up to overhead height, he started installing the wooden frames for the door and windows. These frames were made from old wood. Though they had some cracks, the grain of the wood was natural, and the texture was simple. He measured again and again, to make sure the frames fit tightly against the stone wall, without any gaps. Once the walls were stable, he started working on the roof frame. A few thick logs were laid across the top of the walls as the main beams. Then he used thin long wooden strips as rafters, securing them one by one. The whole roof was made into a sloped surface to let rain run off easily. The chimney was built at the same time. It was made from the same kind of irregular stones as the walls. Though it looked somewhat random, it matched the rest of the building. The smoke channel inside the chimney was cleverly planned, so smoke wouldn't blow back in and air could still flow through. Next came covering the roof. He laid down on the wooden frame, discarded planks and tree bark, and then layered thick hay and large leaves on top, pressing each layer down firmly. To prevent heavy rain from seeping through, he specially brushed on the outermost layer a homemade waterproof coating made from a mix of resin and clay, strong and eco-friendly. Standing inside and looking up, those layered coverings looked like a natural suit of armor. The inside of the shelter, he didn't slack off either. He built a stove out of stones in the corner, connected to the chimney, good for cooking and for heating. Once the stove was lit, the room felt warmer. On the floor he spread hay and wood shavings so it wouldn't be cold to step on. Along the wall, he put together a few simple beds using wooden strips and wove a bamboo storage shelf for hanging tools and storing dry food. He placed stone slabs at the entrance to keep mud from getting tracked in. He even thoughtfully placed in the corner a small wooden stool made from scraps so he could sit down and rest when tired. To make the shelter more durable, he pressed against the outside of the walls another thick layer of bark and mud to block wind and rain. He also dug shallow trenches around the house so even if a heavy downpour hit, the water would drain away naturally and not flood inside. He thought about ventilation and lighting too. He purposely left a few small gaps along the roof edge to let sunlight in without making it stuffy. If you have watched this far, it means like me, you also appreciate craftsmanship. As the old saying goes, giving a like is a nice gesture. Not giving one is fine too. If you enjoy this kind of creativity, give him a like. Consider it a round of applause for his hard work and determination. What do you think of this shelter built from waste? On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give it? Thanks for sticking with me till the end. See you in the next one.